right, well, I'll just say Nilo.
Okay.
I'm Nilo.
And I'm Jen.
Welcome to When Animals Attack,
The podcast.
the first one.
So we're here to tell you some stories, but first let's say a little bit about how we got here. I'm an animal lover with maybe a slightly macabre, unhealthy obsession with animal attack stories. I read about them, I watch movies about them, and I went looking for podcasts about them, and to my surprise and horror, I could not find a single one. Although, last night, I noticed Once Upon a Crime is doing a series right now about crimes involving animal attacks. So
That's amazing.
yeah, so check that out if you're interested, folks. And anyway, so I figured it was on us to get this started.
To get this ball rolling.
Yeah, so what about you, Nina?
I mean, honestly, what isn't interesting about when animals attack humans? It's pretty
a good
cool.
point. Yeah.
It's really awesome. It's terrifying. It's primal.
Yes.
And yeah, that's more or less where I'm at with that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are there any animals that particularly frighten you?
Snakes have always really scared me a lot.
Yeah. Any reason why? Did one attack you?
No, one nearly attacked my mom,
Oh.
and that was pretty harrowing. She was very young and living in Iran when she was a kid, and she lived in a 2-room house, and at night they slept in the living room. It was very warm, and she was laying down next to her mom. A snake crawled over both of their legs.
Oh, shit.
And when it got to my mom, her mother, my grandmother, said, don't move. And whatever that is, I mean, it's like intergenerational trauma. Basically, I held on to that fear
Wow.
of snakes. I developed one from that, and probably the first Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you know what kind of snake it was? Like, was it a deadly snake?
It was a viper.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's intense.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
So animals are scary.
Yeah, they definitely can be, but I think we both love them.
Oh yeah, we love animals. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
people are way scarier.
yeah, this is not a, like, hunt them down and kill them kind of podcast. This is just like, let's explore these primal, as you put it, encounters between woman, man, person of any gender, and beast.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I'm actually not scared of any particular animals. I'm a little bit arachnophobic, so if we ever do a spider episode, I may have words to say about times I've almost caused car accidents because of spiders. But in general, like, I've encountered live grizzlies in the wild, and that's been one of the craziest, most incredible experiences of my life. So that's part of why I wanted to tell a story about a grizzly bear today. But first, I think we have something a little more recent, a little more topical.
Oh yeah. When did this happen? It was recent.
It was very recent,
Yeah. So there is a interesting story of gay swans that were ferociously protective over a nest that they made in a lake. It's somewhere in Austria. I think it's called Styria, Austria.
Cool.
And they were attacking people who got close to their nest, and they were protecting a small collection of plastic bottles that they were protecting as if it was their eggs.
Wow.
Which is really interesting.
It's really sweet.
It is very sweet. And they became, a problem apparently for people at the park, and they were biting them, and, there was a gash on someone's arm.
Sure.
It's like, just leave them alone. I don't know.
I know.
But
I mean, honestly, swans don't fuck around. Like, they're kind of scary.
They are very scary. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm team swans here.
I'm definitely team swans. They were removed and put somewhere where they had more space to be. And I think they kept them together.
Nice. To
Yeah.
explore their love
Yeah, to
away from prying human eyes.
yeah, exactly. It's very close to my heart.
Yeah, I love it. Apparently, it happens. Like, I just saw there was some Daily Mail, so take it with a grain of salt, article from 2010 that gay swans are a thing. You know, you can find them. They chill at swaneries in the UK too. I don't know.
That's cool.
Yeah, I guess there's lots of like queerness in the animal kingdom.
Absolutely, yeah.
People don't talk about it as much as maybe we should. It's not just like other great apes or animals close to us. Yeah, and swans.
Oh yeah, I mean sex and sexual behavior, and I mean I'm a big Isabella Rossellini fan. She did the show, right?
Green Porno.
That's it, Green Porno, and she absolutely brings that up, with all kinds of different animals, insects, and all kinds of things that they do. It's like a rainbow. It's a cornucopia of events.
Cornucopia of sexy animal sex.
Yes. Although this is about when animals attack, not.
That's true.
I do
know.
Yeah. Well.
Eros and Thanatos. They got really. I don't know. They go hand in hand.
Yeah. So.
Cool. Well, that's a fun story. I think it's lighter than the one I have to tell, which is from a while ago. But we didn't want to start off with like the most depressing story imaginable. So this one's, it could be worse. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start with one of my all-time favorite animal attack stories. I mean, I don't know if most people have a favorite animal attack story, but this is probably mine. I remember going to Glacier National Park in 2009, and I really wanted to see a bear. Never saw one on that trip, sadly, but at the ranger station, I got this book called Mark of the Grizzly by Scott McMillan, and it's just a book of animal attack stories, and it's still definitely one of the best I've ever read. It's really well written, and I really like his perspective. He's very smart and knowledgeable and cares about bears and people, so it's cool. I highly recommend it. But yeah, so I was reading that on our trip, and I remember being around the campfire and reading to the person I was with, Andrew, just like making him listen to these animal attack stories, and he thought I was such a weirdo for wanting to read this stuff, but hopefully there are some other weirdos out there too. Anyway, so this one is about two women, Anne Quarterman and Christine Bielkowski. I apologize, Christine, if I'm mispronouncing your name. But anyway, they drove up to this place called Revelstoke in British Columbia. So they're up in Canada looking for a seasonal job. They're both pretty young, in their 20s. And this is an area where there were grizzlies. There aren't many places left in the contiguous U.S. where you can see a grizzly, but in Canada, they're a lot more widespread. So in this place, in the town of Revelstoke, it was like a logging town, and grizzlies used to come forage at the dump until they put an electric fence around it. So, but somehow no one had ever been attacked. There were never any real problems. But surrounding the town, as McMillan puts it, the vast and fecund forest there is a living thing. So, he gets kind of poetic. I like it. So Anne was tall and lanky. She was 28, and she was there looking for a job. Christine was 25, 5'0", and just there to tag along, accompany her friend, get some fresh air. Both women had a lot of outdoor experience. They loved working in the bush, as it were, not that bush, you perv. And Christine did biological surveys, finding and counting animals, and Anne had worked in as a backcountry cook. So they had a lot of experience. They both encountered bears before, no incidents. So anyway, Anne was hoping to get this job cooking over the winter at Durand Glacier Chalet. It's this backcountry lodge that caters mostly to skiers between two big national parks up there. Now, there are only two ways to get up there if you're not a paying customer. You can either wait around for one of the few helicopters and hope that it'll have room for you when it shows up. Or you hike the 14 kilometers or whatever that is in miles for our U.S. audience to just get up there yourself. So they chose to do that because they didn't want to count on the helicopter, because Anne's looking for a job, and she had a friend who'd worked there before who gave her kind of a tip, like they like it if you walk up because it shows like initiative. So that's what they did. They decided to hike on up. All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Picture it. It's a damp and chilly morning on October 1st, 1994. It's the mid-90s, so I don't know. We can imagine. I don't know. I don't really have anywhere to go with it, so we'll just skip it unless you have thoughts.
But what?
Like what they might have looked like.
Well, probably like, I don't know, if they had like curly hair, like bangs maybe, and
Maybe one of them had the Rachel cut.
yeah, maybe
Something
that's
like
a possibility.
Yeah, I don't know.
Close time.
Yeah.
Shop at close time.
But they got their backpacks, and that's about it. So they began by driving this old Ford Ranger pickup truck. It was a stick shift. It's important later. Up a very narrow mountain road. They passed a highway crew working at the beginning, and then it's this like just really narrow mountain pass where it's a steep drop off on one side down to a creek, and the other side is just sheer like mountain face on the way up. And so yeah, it's the kind of road where if another car comes the other way, one of you is going to have to back up a long way to get and let the other pass. So it's a little treacherous, and it was a rainy day, so that didn't help. It's thick forest, so we've got not great visibility even on a clear day. So they get to the end of the road, park, throw on their packs, start their hike. The plan was to stay overnight at the chalet and hike out the next day. The trail's kind of overgrown, so they lost track of it a few times. They saw some bear signs, so they saw some paw prints. They saw some poo, and they knew enough to know that it was like kind of a nutritionally poor diet, just berries and stuff. So remember, this is October, and if we're talking about bears, that's important because they hibernate in the winter in most places, and they get hyperphagic, it's called, at this time of year, where they have to consume as many calories as possible before they hibernate. So if they're having trouble finding the right kind of foods, then that's when they can be more dangerous than usual, and as in a predatory way. But anyway, so the women did everything they were supposed to do. They did everything right. They were really alert. They were talking and making a lot of noise so that they wouldn't like sneak up on any bears and surprise them, because that's actually the most common reason why a grizzly bear would attack a person if it happens at all. It's just, the bear is surprised, and unlike black bears, which kind of evolved for a flight response where they climb trees and they live in forests, grizzlies evolved to have a fight response. So especially a mama bear with cubs, they're going to stand their ground and fight if they're threatened. So the women were trying to make sure that didn't happen. So they're making noise, going about their way. They stop for a moment to take in the view, and all of a sudden they see a mama bear with two cubs. They're still a few hundred meters away, so they weren't alarmed. They were just like, oh, look, bears. And at first all they could see were brown dots. They were so far away. But almost immediately, the dots started getting bigger. And
oh my God.
The women did a double take as they realized those dots were coming right for them.
Wow.
So mother bears with cubs are notoriously the most dangerous if we're talking grizzlies. And so, all in the instant that this is taking place, they're thinking about what that might mean. And what normally happens, actually, if a bear attacks in this way, like a grizzly just trying to neutralize a threat, usually it'll run right at you but stop just short of hitting you. So, like, if anything happens at all, that's by far the most common type of encounter. Like, they'll charge at you, but they stop. So in that situation, you're not supposed to like drop to the ground and play dead. You're just, if you could just kind of stand your ground, if you don't do anything threatening, maybe you back away slowly, maybe you speak calmly, then the bear recognizes you're a person, and just whatever, and will probably just run away. That's what happens most often. But sometimes the bear will finish the charge and hit you. And that's what happened here. So the mama bear started by just kind of running right at them, and they yelled and raised their arms, which may have been a bad idea if the bear, they were trying to like show the bear that they were humans, but that might have made the bear feel more threatened or something. Nobody knows. But it kind of kept running right for them, and so Christine takes off running, which is a terrible idea. If any predatory type animal runs towards you, you do not run. But so Anne says, Christine, don't run. So she slows down to like a fast walk. So then Anne's right there with her. No trees to climb. They had nowhere to go, but they saw like a ridge. And so I guess they were just thinking like, let's just get out of her line of sight. So they just walked behind the ridge. And for a second, they couldn't see her, and they just hoped she went away. Then all of a sudden, the mama bear's head pops up over the rise. And Anne had brought bear spray with her. So it's like a bigger, stronger, more concentrated form of pepper spray. And it's like the best form of deterrent, but it doesn't work always. Bears are like dogs or pigs. They're closely related. They have personalities. Yeah. So they're not totally predictable with their behavior. Like, you can generalize, but they have different motivations, and they don't all react the same way. But bear spray is a really good thing to have with you if you're in bear country. Anyway, so she had it. So again, they did everything they're supposed to do. And she got her finger on the trigger. So when the bear's head popped up, she was ready to go. The bear charges, lunges up on her hind legs, like looming just a few feet away, and Anne pulls that trigger. Shoots her right in the face with the bear spray. And she thought it worked. The bear dropped and ran right past her. But before she could breathe a sigh of relief, she turned around, and that's when she saw what the bear was doing to her friend.
Oh my God.
The bear had picked Christine up by the left elbow, and as Anne puts it, was throwing her around like a rag doll. She says, I knew I had to do something. It was just total instinct. I ran over and sprayed the bear again while she was biting Christine. The bear was just tossing her around like a dog would with a toy. And when Anne sprayed her, she threw Christine into a small tree. So again, Anne thought it worked. But although it did work for Christine, it didn't work out so well for Anne, because then the bear turned on her. Grabbed her by the right arm and bit down hard, like all the way to the bone. Didn't break it, but shredded the flesh all down her arm. And they wrestled around for what probably seemed like an eternity, but was probably actually only a few seconds. And she tried to spray the bear again, but the can was empty. So she could smell the stench of the bear's breath, the damp fur, kind of like a combo of wet dog and rotting meat. And she thought, this is my death, She thought she should try playing dead, which is a good idea if you're being mauled by a grizzly that's not trying to eat you, which clearly it wasn't, because it wasn't like biting chunks out of them. It was just biting, and it's sort of like trying to just neutralize the threat. And then, I don't know what the point of saying this is. I'm sure people in the midst of a bear attack aren't going to be able to think this through, but I don't know. Maybe you can. And so she thought, if I try to play dead, the bear will leave me alone, and that is what you're supposed to do. Easier said than done when you're being torn apart by an animal. So she rolls on her stomach, does her best not to kind of fight or resist as the bear bites into her body again and again. Then it started using its claws, which are the tools it uses to rip the bark from a tree and shatter the bones of a deer, Incredibly powerful. And as Anne says, she scalped me with her paw, one swipe of her paw. Wow. Just ripped the flesh off. So Anne is screaming this whole time, even though she thought she was playing dead, and she thought she was about to be dead. But all of a sudden, Christine was back in the fight. She comes over and kicks the bear in the head. She kicked so hard, she actually landed on her back. Like, she propelled herself off the bear. So the bear turns back to her, starts chewing on her leg, but she kept kicking. She just kept fighting back. And finally, one of the kicks, like, hit the bear right on the snout, and the bear was not into that, so it kind of jumped back. And I guess just as one last fuck you, kind of bit her on the hip, but didn't rip any flesh, didn't chew, just like one little nip, and ran away. And all of a sudden the attack was over, and they were both alive. But their ordeal was not over, because remember, they were in the middle of the woods. They're both gravely injured. They're all alone. They don't entirely know where they are, but they know they're about halfway between the chalet and the car. So for a minute, they start arguing about, like, which way are we going to go?
Right.
Do we go uphill to the chalet? Well, that involves a lot more energy.
Yeah, going uphill.
Yeah, so they didn't want to go uphill. Also, then they'd have to wait for a helicopter once they got up there. And so it just seemed like the obvious choice was to go back down. But that's the way the bear had gone. So ultimately, that is what they chose. And they kind of bandaged themselves up with a first aid kit as best they could. But they hiked all the way down, terrified that any minute they could run into this bear again, or for that matter, any other big scary animal that might smell their blood. So they, yelled and sang and did what they could to distract themselves and try to prevent scaring any other bears that might turn on them. And, each of them has their arm in a sling, and they're leaning on each other, literally and figuratively. They finally make it to the car. And that was a big deal, but they still had to get 5 miles down that scary-ass mountain road in a stick shift, which involves using 2 hands, right, to steer the wheel and to operate the stick. Neither one of them had 2 good arms. So basically, once again, in order to survive, they had to work together. So they, gushing blood, one of them uses her good arm to operate the steering wheel, and her good leg to deal with the clutch. That was Christine. And then Anne uses her arm to shift the gears while Christine puts her foot on the clutch and steers. And, so they had to kind of coordinate, go really slowly, but they also wanted to go really fast because they needed medical attention. And they're navigating this narrow-ass road where they could, like, drive off to their deaths at any moment around these steep, narrow curves. Terrifying. But then they get their first stroke of luck, because when they get to the end of the road, they encounter that highway crew. And I guess they saw this one guy with a chainsaw who took one look at them, like, turned white and just, like, ran to get help. And so, they called an ambulance, and I guess the crew asked the women, do you want us to go hunt down the bear? And they both immediately said no, because they felt like, if she wanted to kill us, we wouldn't be here today. As Anne said, she was telling us to get out of her territory, which we did gladly. And so she was just being a bear, following her instincts. She wasn't doing anything wrong. And it's true, she could have killed them. And so the crazy thing about most of these bear attacks that aren't predaceous is that the bear is relatively gentle when you think of, like, this 1,000-pound animal.
Considering what they could do to you.
With, like, one paw, they can probably knock your whole head off. But
easily.
They don't. So why they show restraint, nobody really knows. And also nobody knows why this particular bear charged from so far away, or why it didn't stop with the bear spray. But, either way, I just think it's such an incredible story, because both of these women survived, and they survived by taking turns, risking their own lives to save each other. So, I don't know, I just love the story. I think kind of has it all. Like badass women,
Badass.
survival,
So badass.
like epic survival. And they all live. Like the bear doesn't have to die because, they weren't doing anything stupid. The bear didn't do anything unnatural. And so everybody kind of walked away. And obviously it's horrible that they had to live through this. I'm sure it was a profound trauma, but, both of the women have gone on to live full lives and they're still badass and,
Did they recover from their injuries?
Yeah, they recovered and they both are still like adventurous.
Wow. It didn't deter them from leaving.
And they don't hold anything against they still love the outdoors. And
that's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah.
British Columbia is very rugged.
Totally.
Such a beautiful place.
Have you been up there?
I've been there once.
Yeah.
And I went past Whistler a little bit near Vancouver. And I understand why they would want to be there. It's really the most beautiful place I've ever visited, like natural terrain.
Yeah, the place I encountered grizzlies in the wild was Brooks Camp up in Alaska, so it's pretty similar in terms of terrain, and that was just fucking magical. I saw bears just a few feet away from me in the wild, but it's really well-maintained park where they don't see humans as threats and everybody behaves themselves.
That's
so
awesome.
You just get to
probably saw them at a good time of year too.
Yeah, during the salmon run. So they're,
they're full and happy.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and they've learned that humans are going to be there and they're not going to bother them. They're not going to hunt them. So you just get to coexist. It's pretty beautiful.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah. So I guess in the future, we're going to try to interview people. I might get my mom to call in. You could maybe ask your mom if she wants to.
Yeah.
If any listeners out there have animal attack stories, you can send them to us at whenanimalsattackpod@gmail.com. Or, if you're local, we're in LA, we can bring people into the studio with us to tell their story, or you can call in and tell it yourself, or we can just read it. But yeah, we're definitely interested in hearing personal stories. I didn't know anyone who's been attacked by a bear, and neither did you. So we couldn't do that. I think trying to link it thematically is ideal, but we'll probably do sharks soon because Shark Week coincide. But yeah, I would like to kind of end with a film recommendation because Nilo and I met in film school and in the same program. So we're both film nerds.
That's right.
Personally, I'm really into animal attack movies, and there are about 1 billion about bears. For Grizzly specifically, probably the most obvious one is Grizzly from the 70s, which was billed as Jaws with claws.
Nice.
Trying to capitalize on Jaws. It's a total Jaws ripoff. But it's kind of fun. It has its moments. Last night with my friend Deb, I actually watched Claws, which came out. So Grizzly was 76. Claws came out in 77. It's like kind of racist and sexist and ableist, but it's also got like the most hilarious bear attack sequences and this really trippy like Native American mystical hallucination sequence, which is part of the racism, but it was also a really hilarious sequence of like, I don't know why he's hallucinating like mountain goats and stuff. Wow,
that sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, it's super low budget, shot in Alaska, and so they have this like gorgeous nature footage, but then all of the acting is so atrocious, and it's like, they clearly just shot at whatever time of day. So it's like someone's driving down the road in the light time, and then it's like cut and it's dark, and then it's cut and it's light again. It's all like the same scene. So yeah, it's really bad, but kind of fun. But the one I wanted to mention is kind of a tease because we can't watch it. It's Grizzly 2, The Predator, which was shot as a sequel to Grizzly. And
what year was that one made?
1983.
Okay.
And it was actually supposed to be George Clooney's first role.
Oh my God.
And Charlie Sheen and Laura Dern, it was also one of their first roles. So they were all in it, but we can't see it because like the story of the film, I'm sure, is 1,000 times better than the film would have been anyway. Basically, it's supposed to take place at an outdoor concert, and because they knew they couldn't, super low budget, they knew they couldn't get the environmental permits and stuff, so they were like, all right, let's go to Hungary. And then for some reason, they had the caterer in Hungary rewrite the script.
The caterer.
The caterer. And so it's apparently totally nonsensical anyway. And then they couldn't get an actual bear. So they created a really shitty looking animatronic bear and a guy in a bear suit. And they tried to like cut something together, and apparently it's just like such a mess that nobody could edit it together coherently. And then the biggest challenge is that one of the producers ran off with all the money halfway through and spent like 5 years in prison. So, you know, basically the film was never finished. And I don't know, you can, if you Google it, you can find like little clips of it. And I think Cinephile in LA has like a working print, you know, like a rough cut of it. But I'm still hoping there's going to be like a Kickstarter and that like Clooney will get on board and they'll all give permission, because I think they've been holding it back because they don't really, it's probably not their proudest acting moment. I don't know. So, you know, if they got on board though, I bet it's pretty fun. Like, who wouldn't want to see that?
I would love to see that. That's amazing. Laura Dern and George Clooney. That's great.
And Charlie Sheen, but yeah.
Yeah, right. Well.
Anyway, so Nilo, any final thoughts?
Well, just join us for next time, guys.
Yeah. And
oh yeah, thanks to Art and Eric for letting us use their studio here in Inglewood, California.
What's their podcast?
Their podcast is called Mature Adult Time.
Ooh, and Nilo is featured on an episode of it. Do you know what episode it is?
I do not. It's one of the recent ones. It's the all-women episode.
Well, you'll just have to listen to all of it if you want to get a Nilo fix.
Right.
Before our next episode. All right. Well, again, if you want to send us your stories or just say hi, shoot us an email at whenanimalsattackpod@gmail.com. And we'll probably get some social media out there soon, but so far, I don't know if you want to play. My own Instagram is Switchblade Whiskers if you want to see some cat pics.
Yes, you should definitely check out the cat pics. They're pretty great.
Nilo, you want to plug anything?
No.
All right, cool. So, well, everyone, anyone, thanks for listening. And until next time, stay safe out there.
And don't feed the bears, guys. Don't do it.
Don't do it.